All right, guys, welcome to the channel. In today's video, guys, it's another one from my series of characters that did not deserve their fates. And today we're going to be talking about Richard Harrow from Boardwalk Empire. Now, before I get into Richard's character, let me just say, if you haven't watched Boardwalk Empire, you're really missing out. Boardwalk Empire is one of the best shows that has been on television, streaming, whatever you want to call it, in the last 15 years. It's crazy to think that the show's finale was like 10 years ago, but it is definitely one of those hidden gems. I don't think it gets the credit it deserves. It should be up there with shows like The Sopranos, but it gets lost in the shuffle. But like, one of the things on the show that I commend about it is it's a period piece, and they do a great job of taking you to that period, into the 20s, into the 30s, during Prohibition and all that time. They do a great job of that. Also, the acting is stellar, from the top marquee to the supporting actors. For example, Stephen Graham, hands down, greatest rendition of Al Capone. There's no there. This isn't even a discussion. I mean, this is one of those. If you say anybody else was better, hey, let's fight me then. That's how good his performance was. He is the definitive. He is the definitive Al Capone on screen, and he did this on the small screen. And look, I don't care. Some people will say, "Well, De Niro on Untouchables." Nope. And look, I respect Tom Hardy. I think Tom Hardy is one of the best actors going in Hollywood right now. But I don't know what the hell they were trying to do in that Capone movie he did about 5 years ago. A lot of that doesn't have to do with him. That's the direction. But let me just say, Stephen Graham, you also have great portrayals of Lucky Luciano, Myers Lansky. Also, the late, great Michael K. Williams. He plays a fictional character named Chalky White. Amazing. So yeah, check that out. I mean, you can get it on, you can stream it on HBO Max or whatever, but check it out. I highly recommend you do that. It's one, like I said, one of the best shows that we've had last 15, 20 years. But anyway, let's talk about this character, Richard Harrow. So Richard Harrow, played by Jack Houston. Jack Houston is a member of the Houston Hollywood acting family. He's the nephew of Angelica Houston and Danny Houston, and his grandfather is the late great director John Huston. He directed Chinatown. I mean, I think that's the only movie he's directed that I've seen, and I own the movie. But anyway, let's talk about this character, Richard Harrow. So Richard Harrow is a World War I vet who has been through the grinder. I mean, he's seen a lot of death, and he's created a lot of deaths. He's got a lot of bodies on him just from the war. I believe he said he killed 64 people. He was a sniper. Unfortunately, the war affected him mentally, but it also affected him physically, like a lot of soldiers of that time period. And of course, they didn't have the tech that they have today. So, like, half of his face is blown off. So he wears this prosthetic, and he feels that he's a monster, and other people, feel he's a monster initially. Like, people are frightened of him, and he feels like a monster. He's this conflicted character. He feels like he's a monster for the things he's done and experienced, but at the same time, there's a part of him that wants that old life that he had. Like, he's someone who dreams of having a family, but because of his circumstances, what happened to him, and his inability to make connection with people, from his part and from their part as well, because all they see is the damage. They don't see who he is inside. He's a very sad, tragic character until, he meets Jimmy Darmody, who's also a war vet, who's one of our main characters, that brings Richard to Atlantic City, and they start running together, and Richard becomes his muscle. He becomes Jimmy's muscle. And throughout, like I say, you start to see the can't get it out. Start to see the nuance of the character. Like I mentioned about, he's a person who wants that family life. You have a character like Jimmy, who has the family, but he's mad about his financial situation and his lot in life. Whereas there's a part where Richard tells him, as he's looking at the family portrait, or Jimmy, his wife and kid, he tells him, how does it feel to be the man who has everything? It's one of those things. Jimmy doesn't really see it though. He's thinking about the money that like Luciano and those other guys make and Nucky, but not realizing that if you look at those guys who don't have families, the character of Nookie, played by Steve Buscemi, the main character, a guy who's trying to chase and create a family and manufacture a family, whereas Jimmy has that. He's rich with that, but it is what it is. It's one of those things, people don't know what they got until it's gone. So, like I said, as the season progresses, Richard becomes the muscle, and Richard gets a lot of bodies. And I'm not just, he's. I was looking at, you can look online, and I was researching his kill list. I mean, if you add it to the 60 bodies he got over, he got overseas, he probably got another 30 here when he gets here. So, but anyway, but like I said, he's just character. There's this, there's more to him, and you see more of that when he interacts with Jimmy's wife, Angela, and then of course later on he becomes a protector for their son, and then he also later on in the movie, or excuse me, later on the show, he finally gets an opportunity at love. Everything is set up for him to make this happen. He's reconnected with the sister back home, but like I said, something involving protection of Jimmy's son, he has to do what he has to do, and he has to go back into the fray and be that guy again, to sacrifice what little bit of humanity he has left for the protection of his friend's son, and he does that. So, and then when Richard does this, he's basically told, hey, you need to, whatever's wrong with you, you get that figured out, and then you can come to us. So he has this purpose. He needs to figure out, the demons, whatever he has, the killing has to stop. And once he decides for the killing to stop, he can go be with his new family, the new girl he's fallen in love with. But he has to get the boy. He has to get Jimmy. He has to get Jimmy's son. Jimmy was his boy. And so, it's like the old saying goes, when you get these movies, the soldier that takes one mission too many. Their skills aren't as sharp. You see in the scene, his skills aren't as sharp, and he's contracted to take out an adversary of Chalky White's. Well, the mission goes tits up, and as you can see, Richard is wounded, and Richard is wounded during the attempt, which earlier Richard, that wouldn't have happened to, but I think like his character, it was just too much. This man went through too much. It's too much killing, and he was finally starting to crack. He just couldn't do it anymore. And like I said, in the movie Rocky, Mickey tells Rocky, you messed around and you got civilized. And I would say Richard began to get domesticated because he had that purpose. He had that girl who he met, who was going to be going to give him the family he wanted, Jimmy's son. Like, he had this family lined up. So like he had a whole purpose, and he became, like I said, he became domesticated or civilized, if you want to use Mickey's term. And it's sad because it's one of those where he's mortally wounded. He knows he's not going to make it back to Wisconsin where everybody's waiting for him. So he takes solace in the place where him and his girl, where they made love. That's where he spends his final moments. And then we see, because at first you just don't. I mean, when I first saw the episode, I was like, gut shots, you never know. But I kind of figured that was it for him. And then it was confirmed when you see him at the end. He's going on this long road. You think, oh, maybe he got on that train. But you figure out, oh no, it's in the next life, because we actually get a reveal of Richard's face, before the war, and ultimately Richard Harrow is no more. And that's why I said, like I said, Richard Harrow was a great character. He's a fan favorite of the show. Like, anybody watches the show, they say name your favorite characters. Richard Harrow is usually he's on that list. You know, if you were to give a top three, he's definitely on the everybody's top three, I would say. And he's a lot of people's favorite character. But yeah, guys, I just want to do this quick video talking about a character who is he deserved the happy ending. You know, as in life, you know, we a lot of times we don't get what we deserve. You know, people who deserve better in life, they tend to be the ones who get the shaft, who get shafted in life. Whereas, you have individuals who, somehow they always land on their feet. You know, people who deserve to have the karma and the their come ups, they always win. They always win. You know, so yeah, guys, that's it. You know, Richard Harrow, man. Like I said, before I get out of here, check out Boardwalk Empire. And guys, like I always say, if it's for 1 minute, 5 minutes, or whole damn video, I appreciate you taking time out of your day to view my content. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe, smash the like, get in the comments. Tell me what you think. What did you think of the character Richard Harrow? Are you in agreement with me? Like he didn't deserve what happened. He deserved the happy ending, or are you like, hey, P, he did a lot of dirt and it just caught up with him, and this is what happens, you know? So with that being said, everybody, it's your boy P signing off, guys. I'll see you in the next video. Take it easy.